Hold still, scholarship girl. Let me fix that nappy mess for you. Robert Clarkson's voice dripped with contempt as he shoved Claire Samuel into a folding chair, his designer sneakers squeaking on the gym floor. His fingers tangled cruelly in her hair, yanking her head back while his free hand brandished scissors. You people never learn to stay in your lane, he sneered, angling his phone to capture her face. The scissors flashed. Snip. A thick section of perfectly coiled hair tumbled to the polished floor. Laughter erupted, harsh, ugly, validating. There. Now you look like you belong at this school, Robert announced, admiring his work for the camera. Claire didn't scream. She didn't beg. Her hands trembled as she reached down to collect the fallen coils, her breathing controlled despite the burning behind her eyes. She looked directly into Robert's recording phone, her voice eerily calm. You have no idea what you just did. Robert smirked, already uploading. He had no clue he'd just humiliated the stepdaughter of the one man who could dismantle his entire world without leaving a single fingerprint. Welcome to the channel where we explore stories of justice, power, and redemption. If this story of a woman who refused to stay silent resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below letting me know where in the world you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from across the globe. Now let's continue with Claire's story. The autumn sun filtered through Westbridge University's massive gymnasium windows, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood. Claire Samuel had arrived early for the student wellness event, a campus initiative designed to foster community building among the diverse student body. She'd positioned herself near the equipment closet, close enough to participate if required, far enough to avoid unwanted attention. She'd perfected this art of calculated invisibility over 2 years at Westbridge. As one of only 30 black students in a population of 3,000, Claire had learned that excellence was her armor and anonymity was her shield. She maintained a 3.9 GPA, volunteered at the campus writing center, and kept her head down. Her scholarship depended on both her grades and her ability to avoid disruptions. The gym buzzed with forced enthusiasm. Students clustered in their usual groups. The athletes, the Greek life crowd, the international students, the scholarship kids. Claire scrolled through her phone, reviewing notes for Monday's sociology exam, when she felt the energy in the room shift. Robert Clarkson had entered, flanked by his usual entourage of legacy admits and trust fund beneficiaries. He moved through Westbridge like he owned it, because in a very real sense his family did. The Clarkson name adorned the new business school, the renovated student union, and at least 3 endowed professorships. Robert himself was a walking billboard of privilege. Designer athleisure, expensive haircut, the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. His eyes scanned the gym and landed on Claire. Well, Robert's voice carried across the suddenly quiet space. Looks like the diversity program is really working overtime. His crew snickered. Claire's fingers tightened around her phone, but she didn't look up. Don't engage. Don't react. Don't give him what he wants. But Robert Clarkson wasn't used to being ignored. Hey, scholarship girl. I'm talking to you. He crossed the distance between them in long strides, his phone already out and recording. That hair is really something. Very authentic. The way he said authentic made it sound like an accusation. Claire stood slowly, gathering her belongings. Excuse me, she said quietly, moving to step around him. Robert's hand shot out, gripping her shoulder. Where are you going? I was just about to give you a makeover. Free of charge. His friends laughed, forming a loose circle that blocked her exit. Several students pulled out their phones. Others looked away, complicit in their silence. Let me go, Claire said, her voice steady but her heart hammering. Come on, don't be sensitive. I'm doing you a favor. Robert's smile was cruel as he produced a pair of scissors from his gym bag, the kind used to cut athletic tape. This whole natural hair trend? It's getting old. Let me help you fit in better. Before Claire could react, Robert shoved her down into a nearby folding chair. His hand fisted in her hair, yanking her head back with enough force to make her gasp. The scissors gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Robert, stop. Someone in the crowd began, but their objection died quickly. Snip. The sound echoed in Claire's ears like a gunshot. A section of her carefully maintained hair, hours of work, a connection to her heritage, a source of pride, fell to the floor in a dark coil. The gym erupted in gasps, nervous laughter and the relentless clicking of phone cameras. Robert stepped back, admiring his handiwork while keeping his phone trained on Claire's face. "See? Much better. You should thank me." Claire's hands shook as she reached down to pick up her severed hair. Tears threatened, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not for him." She stood slowly, the uneven patches of her hair a physical violation she could feel with every movement. Her eyes met Robert's camera lens, and in that moment, something inside her crystallized into cold, focused clarity. "You have no idea what you just did," she repeated, her voice carrying a weight Robert was too arrogant to recognize. He laughed, already posting the video with hashtags designed for maximum viral impact. Within minutes, it would have thousands of views. Within an hour, her humiliation would be entertainment for strangers across the country. What Robert Clarkson didn't know, what none of the laughing students knew, was that Claire's quiet, unassuming stepfather, the man who drove a modest sedan and spoke softly in Korean accented English, controlled an empire built on respect, fear, and swift retribution. Lee Kang-jae had spent 20 years building a network that stretched from the docks of Los Angeles to the boardrooms of Seoul, an organization that operated in shadows while legitimate businesses crumbled in daylight. And Robert Clarkson, in his infinite arrogance, had just declared war on Lee Kang-jae's family. The video uploaded. The comments began flooding in, racist, cruel, celebratory. Claire walked out of the gym with her head high, clutching her fallen hair, while behind her Robert basked in his moment of viral glory. He had no idea that in a penthouse office downtown a phone would soon ring. That Claire's mother, Elizabeth, would make a single call in rapid Korean. That before the sun set on this day, the machinery of revenge would already be in motion. Robert Clarkson had just made the last mistake of his comfortable life. Claire's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles ached. The 20-minute drive from Westbridge to the Kang-jae estate passed in a blur of stoplights and tear-blurred vision she refused to acknowledge. She tied a silk scarf around her head before leaving campus, hiding the damage, but she could still feel it. The uneven patches, the violation that went deeper than hair. The estate gates opened automatically, recognizing her car. Claire had always felt conflicted about this place. The sprawling property with its manicured gardens, the house that spoke of wealth whose origins she'd never wanted to examine too closely. Her biological father had been a high school teacher. They'd lived in a modest apartment filled with books and laughter. After he died when she was 10, the world had become smaller, quieter, until her mother met Lee Kang-jae 3 years later. Lee had been gentle with her grief, patient with her suspicion. But Claire had never been naive. She knew what import-export meant when the imports came at midnight and the exports left men trembling. She parked in the circular driveway, planning to slip through the side entrance to her room. Just a few hours to process this alone, then she'd figure out what to do. But as she stepped from the car, scarf still covering her head, the front door opened. Elizabeth Kang-jae stood framed in the doorway, elegant in a cream silk blouse and tailored pants. Her mother had an uncanny ability to sense when something was wrong. "Claire? You're home early." "Just tired, Mom. Didn't feel well." Claire kept her head down, moving toward the stairs. "Look at me." Not a request. A command wrapped in maternal concern. Claire's breath caught. Slowly she lifted her head, unwrapping the scarf. Her mother's expression shifted from concern to something molten and dangerous. And rage so controlled it was terrifying. "Who did this to you?" Elizabeth's voice was glass smooth. "It doesn't matter. I'll handle." "Who did this?" "A student. Robert Clarkson." "But Mom, please don't." Elizabeth pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Then she spoke in rapid Korean, the language she only used for Lee's world. Claire caught fragments. "Our daughter. Westbridge. Come home now." "Mom, what are you doing?" Elizabeth ended the call, her eyes never leaving Claire's damaged hair. "What I should have taught you years ago. Some battles you don't fight alone." 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up. Lee Kang-jae emerged, still wearing his tailored suit from whatever business meeting had occupied his afternoon. He walked with the measured grace of a man who never hurried because he never had to. As he entered, Claire noticed the small crimson stain on his right cuff, blood he hadn't noticed yet. Lee's eyes found Claire. For a long moment he simply looked at her and she watched something deadly and absolute settle into his features. Not anger. Something colder. Then he asked the question that would change everything. Do you want me to handle this or do you want to handle it yourself? His respect for her choice shocked her more than anything that had happened today. Claire had chosen to try the official channels first. Despite Lee's offer, despite the dangerous promise in his eyes, she wanted to believe the system could work. She'd spent Monday morning gathering evidence, screenshots of the viral video before Robert could delete it, written statements from 3 witnesses, and her own detailed account of the assault. By Tuesday afternoon she sat across from Dean Patricia Whitmore in an office decorated with framed degrees and photos of the dean shaking hands with wealthy donors. Campus Security Chief Morris sat to the dean's right, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Samuel, we take all complaints seriously," Dean Whitmore began, her tone suggesting otherwise. "But having reviewed the incident, I'm concerned you may have misinterpreted Robert's intentions." Claire's fingers tightened on the folder in her lap. "Misinterpreted? He cut my hair. On camera. There's video evidence. A video showing what appears to be a student altercation that escalated unfortunately," Chief Morris interjected. "The campus security footage from that time period has been corrupted, unfortunately. Technical glitch. Corrupted." Claire's voice was flat. "How convenient." Dean Whitmore's smile was patronizing. "Miss Samuel, I understand you're upset. But Robert's family has been incredibly generous to this institution. The Clarkson name is on our new library. They've funded scholarships including," she paused meaningfully, "programs that benefit students like yourself." The implication hung in the air like poison. Students like yourself. Scholarship students. Black students. Students who should be grateful for the opportunity and not make waves. Are you suggesting I should accept assault because his family donates money? Claire's voice shook with controlled fury. "I'm suggesting that making this public could have consequences for everyone involved," Whitmore replied smoothly. "Your scholarship requires maintaining good standing with the university. Accusations of this nature, especially against a prominent family, could be seen as problematic. And I've been contacted by the Clarkson family attorney. They're claiming this is a shakedown attempt." Claire stood, her legs unsteady. "I see. So Robert assaults me, films it, posts it online, and I'm the problem." "No one is saying you're the problem, dear. We're simply encouraging you to think carefully about your future here at Westbridge." The meeting ended with promises to continue investigating, that Claire knew meant burying it completely. She walked out of the administration building feeling more violated than she had in that gym. At least Robert's cruelty had been honest. This was systemic betrayal wrapped in institutional politeness. What Claire didn't know was that 2 floors below, in a server room marked authorized personnel only, a young IT specialist named Minjun was downloading files onto an encrypted drive. Campus security footage that had been corrupted, now recovered. Email chains between Dean Whitmore and Thomas Clarkson's attorney. Text messages arranging the cover-up. Lee Kongjae's people had infiltrated the university's systems 12 hours ago. The institution had chosen its side. Now Lee would show them what happened when you protected predators over his daughter. Robert Clarkson returned to his luxury penthouse apartment Wednesday evening feeling invincible. His father's attorney had handled the university complaint. Dean Whitmore had assured them everything was managed, and the video had garnered over 200,000 views. In Robert's world, consequences were things that happened to other people. He swiped his black card at his favorite steakhouse. Declined. He tried again. Still declined. Frowning, he pulled out his Platinum Reserve card. Also declined. "There must be some mistake," he told the hostess, face flushing as the couple behind him exchanged knowing looks. At home he called his bank. "Mr. Clarkson, your accounts show irregular activity. They've been temporarily frozen pending investigation." The same message came from his trust fund manager, his investment accounts, even his credit union. Robert's confusion turned to panic as he scrolled through his phone. His father's construction company stock had dropped 15% in one day. News alerts filled his screen. Clarkson Developments faces multiple inspection failures. Investors pull $40 million from Clarkson projects. Anonymous tips trigger federal review of Clarkson Holdings. Across town, Thomas Clarkson sat in his corner office, staring at an unmarked manila envelope that had been delivered by courier. Inside were photos, high-resolution images of his son assaulting Claire Samuel, surveillance shots of Thomas's own offshore bank accounts with balances clearly visible, and a yellowed newspaper clipping from 3 years ago. Warehouse fire kills 4 Korean workers. Clarkson development under investigation. That investigation had disappeared after strategic donations to the right campaigns. Thomas had thought that problem buried. The envelope contained no note. No demands. Just evidence and a clear message. Someone knew everything. His secretary's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Clarkson, there's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's about your son and it can't wait. Tell her. She says her name is Elizabeth Kongjae." Thomas's blood went cold. He knew that name. Every businessman who'd operated on the West Coast for more than a decade knew that name, even if only as a whisper in closed-door meetings. Import-export. Strategic acquisitions. The kind of organization that made problems disappear and created problems that couldn't be solved with lawyers or money. Send her in. Elizabeth entered wearing a designer suit, her beauty refined and dangerous. She didn't sit when offered. "Mr. Clarkson, I'm Claire Samuel's mother. I thought we should speak about what your son did to my daughter." Thomas's hand trembled slightly as he gestured to the envelope. "I assume this is your husband's work?" Elizabeth's smile was ice. "My husband has concerns about justice. He believes institutions often fail to provide it." He paused, letting the weight of that settle. "He wanted me to assess whether you're a reasonable man, Mr. Clarkson, or whether you'll make the same mistakes your son made." Thomas understood then that he wasn't in a legal battle or a public relations crisis. He was in a war with an enemy who operated by different rules entirely. Rules where money and connections meant nothing. And he was already losing. Claire couldn't sleep. At 3 in the morning she sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop glowing in the darkness, diving deeper into Robert Clarkson's history. What she found made her stomach turn. Expulsion records sealed by legal settlements. 3 previous schools. Ashford Preparatory, St. Augustine's Academy, Riverside Elite. Each time a female student had filed complaints. Each time the Clarkson family's attorneys had negotiated quiet exits. NDAs signed, generous donations made, problems erased. She found them on a private forum, women using anonymous handles to share their stories. "He cut my hair too," wrote Silent No More 2021. "Called it a joke. His father's lawyer offered me $50,000 to sign papers and transfer schools." Another, "He assaulted me at a party. They paid my family $200,000. I had to leave the state." Claire's anger crystallized into something colder, sharper. This wasn't about one bad day. This was a pattern, a predator protected by wealth while his victims were erased. A knock at her door made her jump. "Come in." Lee entered, followed by a man Claire had never seen. Tall, lean, with watchful eyes and a scar along his jawline. He wore a dark suit that couldn't quite conceal the weapon beneath it. "This is Jin-soo," Lee said in his measured way. "He'll be accompanying you wherever you go." "I don't need a bodyguard," Claire protested. "Robert's family is desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices." Lee's tone left no room for argument. "Jin-soo will keep you safe." Over the following days, Claire found herself studying Jin-soo as much as he studied her surroundings. He moved with predatory grace, spoke little, but his respect for her was absolute. He opened doors, maintained distance, and called her Miss Samuel with formal deference that felt earned rather than obligatory. "How long have you worked for my stepfather?" she asked one afternoon as he drove her to campus. 12 years. He saved my life when I had nothing. Now I protect his family." "What does that mean exactly?" "Protecting his family?" Jin-soo's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "It means some people mistake kindness for weakness. We ensure they understand their error." That evening, Claire found Lee in his study, reviewing documents in Korean. She'd avoided this room for years, this space where his real business happened. "I want to understand," she said without preamble. "Your world. How it works. The rules, the structure, the way power actually functions." Lee studied her with those dark, calculating eyes. "Why?" "Because the legitimate world failed me. The university, the police, the system, it all protected him because his family has money. But you, She gestured to the study, to everything it represented. You operate by different rules. Real rules. I need to understand how power actually works, not the fairy tale version they teach in civics class. Lee was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out a chair. Sit. Lesson 1. Respect is not given. It's taken and maintained through consequences. Your university protects Robert because there are no real consequences for him. And in your world? In my world, everyone answers for their choices. Eventually. Are you hooked? If you're following Claire's journey and want to see how this unfolds, show some love by hitting the like button and subscribing. Drop justice in the comments if you think Robert is about to face consequences he can't escape. Robert's hands shook as he scrolled through his Instagram account. Overnight, every post had been replaced with testimonials from women he'd assaulted. Names, dates, photos, detailed accounts. All his carefully buried secrets now displayed for his 30,000 followers to see. His phone exploded with notifications. Friends unfollowing. Brands removing sponsorships. Former teammates posting statements distancing themselves. "We Stand with Survivors" appeared across feeds from people who'd laughed while he cut Claire's hair. How is this happening? Robert demanded when his father finally answered his call. I don't know, Thomas said, and for the first time, Robert heard fear in his father's voice. My lawyers won't return calls. The judge who usually handles our issues retired suddenly. Everyone I've relied on for years has gone silent. That night, Robert tried to escape to his usual club, desperate for normalcy. He made it 3 steps from the entrance before hands grabbed him from the shadows. 4 men in black masks dragged him into an alley. Robert screamed, but they didn't hurt him. They just held him against the wall, faces inches from his. Claire Samuel sends her regards. One whispered in Korean accented English. Then they vanished like smoke. Robert ran to the police station babbling about assault and threats. The desk sergeant took his report with dead eyes. We'll look into it, Mr. Clarkson. The report would never be filed. His girlfriend, Madison, broke up with him via text after receiving an anonymous package containing photos of Robert with other women, along with testimony from 3 of his previous victims. You're a monster, her final message read. Don't contact me again. Desperate and paranoid, Robert hired a private investigator, one of the few professionals who still took his money. Find out everything about Claire Samuel. Who her family is, where she comes from, everything. 3 days later, the investigator arrived at Robert's apartment with a manila folder, his face ashen. Mr. Clarkson, I strongly advise you to leave the country. Tonight if possible. What? Why? The investigator spread documents across Robert's coffee table. News articles with redacted names. Police reports that led nowhere. A grainy photo of a warehouse engulfed in flames. Claire Samuel's stepfather is Lee Kong-jae. He runs one of the most powerful Korean crime syndicates on the West Coast. The warehouse fire your father was investigated for? That killed 4 of Kong-jae's men. He's been waiting for an excuse to move against your family for 3 years. Robert's vision blurred as he read rumor after rumor. Business rivals found dead in shipping containers. Entire criminal organizations dismantled overnight. A city block burned to the ground as a message to someone who disrespected Lee's wife. You didn't assault some scholarship student, the investigator said quietly. You assaulted the daughter of a man who destroys empires before breakfast. Your father's money means nothing. Your connections mean nothing. You're not fighting Claire Samuel. Robert looked up, his face pale. Then what am I fighting? A ghost. And ghosts always collect their debts. Claire found her mother in the garden at twilight, tending to Korean chrysanthemums with methodical precision. Elizabeth looked up as Claire approached, her elegant features softened by the fading light. You've been avoiding me, Elizabeth said, not unkindly. I've been trying to understand. Claire sat on the stone bench. How you can be okay with what Lee does. What he is. Elizabeth set down her gardening shears, her expression distant with memory. I was a prosecutor in Seoul. One of the best. I put away rapists, murderers, men who thought power made them untouchable. Her voice hardened. Until the son of a National Assembly member assaulted my younger sister. I had evidence, witnesses, her testimony. The judge dismissed everything. That monster walked free because his father made phone calls. Claire had never heard this story. Mom, Your aunt never recovered. She took her own life 6 months later. Elizabeth's hands trembled slightly. That's when I learned that justice and law aren't the same thing. The system protects the powerful. It always has. How did you meet Lee? He testified in a case I was prosecuting, money laundering connected to a human trafficking ring. He was careful, gave just enough to convict the right people without exposing himself. Afterward, I investigated him. I discovered what he really was. Elizabeth's smile was complicated. And I discovered that the traffickers who'd walked free from my courtroom 3 years earlier had all disappeared. Lee had handled what the law couldn't. Claire watched her mother's face transform as Lee emerged from the house, carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed one to Elizabeth, and their fingers touched with intimate familiarity. The way he looked at her, protective, devoted, absolute, made Claire understand something she'd never seen before. This wasn't a marriage built on romance or convenience. It was a partnership forged in shared understanding of a brutal truth. Sometimes justice required darkness. You gave up your career for him, Claire said softly. I gave up the illusion that the system could deliver justice. Lee never pretended otherwise. Elizabeth took a sip of tea. When you told me what Robert did, I didn't need to think twice. I knew exactly what had to happen. The social media hack, Claire realized suddenly. The girlfriend receiving those photos. That wasn't Lee's people. Elizabeth's smile was sharp as a blade. Your stepfather handles financial and physical consequences. I handle reputation and relationships. I've spent 15 years building networks in society. Charity boards, university trustees, social circles. I know exactly which pressure points to press. She reached for Claire's hand. Lee's been dismantling the Clarkson empire. But I've been destroying Robert's life, piece by piece, using the very social systems he thought protected him. Claire stared at her mother, this elegant woman who served on the museum board and hosted charity galas, who'd systematically weaponized her respectability to destroy a predator. We protect our family, Elizabeth said simply, by whatever means necessary. The private dining room at Maestro's was elegant and soundproof, the kind of space where powerful men made deals that never appeared in contracts. Lee Kangjae arrived precisely on time, Jin-soo flanking him like a silent shadow. Thomas Clarkson was already seated, his expensive suit unable to disguise the toll the past 2 weeks had taken. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His hands trembled slightly around his scotch glass. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Thomas began, attempting to regain some semblance of control. Lee sat with fluid grace, waving away the waiter who approached. Your company has lost $63 million in the past 2 weeks. Your investors are fleeing. Federal inspectors have found violations at 17 of your construction sites. I thought it was time we spoke directly. Thomas leaned forward. Name your price. Whatever you want. 10 million. 20. I can make you very wealthy. I'm already wealthy, Mr. Clarkson. Lee's voice was silk over steel. What I am not is satisfied. He slid a folder across the table. Thomas opened it with shaking hands. Inside were documents he'd thought buried forever. Offshore accounts, falsified inspection reports, payments to city officials. And photographs from the warehouse fire 3 years ago, the one that killed 4 of Lee's men. You knew those workers were there, Lee said quietly. You ordered the fire anyway to destroy evidence of building code violations. Insurance fraud. 4 men burned alive for your profit. That was investigated. I was cleared. You were protected. There's a difference. Lee's eyes were cold as winter. Your son assaulted my daughter. Humiliated her. Posted it online for entertainment. And then your corrupt system protected him just like it protected you. Thomas's desperation crystallized into anger. You think you can threaten me? I'll go to the FBI. Tell them everything about your organization, your operations. Lee smiled and Thomas felt ice flood his veins. Jin-soo placed a small recording device on the table and pressed play. Thomas's own voice filled the room. I'll go to the FBI. Tell them everything about your organization. You just threatened to expose a criminal enterprise, Lee said pleasantly. Which means you're admitting you know I run one. That recording, along with evidence of your own crimes, creates an interesting situation. He paused, letting it sink in. We both have secrets, Thomas. The difference is I don't pretend to be legitimate. I don't hide behind charity galas and university donations while destroying lives. Lee stood buttoning his jacket. I'm offering you a choice. Deliver your son to face real consequences. Criminal charges, civil suits from his victims, public accountability, or watch me turn everything you've built to ash. Your company, your reputation, your freedom. He leaned close. You have 48 hours. Thomas sat frozen as Lee walked out. When Jin-soo closed the door, Thomas pulled out his phone with trembling hands and called his attorney. Draw up papers removing Robert from the trust fund, he said hoarsely. And find out which countries don't have extradition treaties. He'd chosen himself over his son before the door had even closed. Claire was reviewing case law in her apartment when Jin-soo's phone buzzed. His hand moved to his weapon in one fluid motion. Stay behind me, he commanded, moving toward the bedroom. The window was open. Robert Clarkson stood in her room, wild-eyed and desperate, holding a knife with shaking hands. You ruined my life, he rasped. My father abandoned me. Everyone I know turned on me. Because of you. Jin-soo moved like lightning, disarming Robert and forcing him to his knees before Claire could even scream. The knife clattered across the floor. Jin-soo's forearm pressed against Robert's throat, the pressure precise. Enough to control, not enough to kill. Yet. Miss Samuel? Jin-soo's voice was calm. Your orders. Claire stared at Robert. This predator who'd violated her, who'd humiliated her, who'd destroyed other women's lives with impunity. Now he knelt on her floor, tears streaming down his face, completely powerless. Her phone rang. Lee's name appeared on the screen. Jin-soo told me, Lee said when she answered. Robert broke into your home. Threatened you with a weapon. By the laws of my world, that carries only one consequence. Pause. But this is your choice, Claire. Always yours. What do you want done with him? Claire looked at Robert, and in that moment she understood the full weight of the power her stepfather had given her. She could have Robert killed, one word and he'd disappear forever. She could have him financially destroyed beyond recovery. She could walk away and let Lee's organization handle it their way. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started recording. Confess, she told Robert. Every woman you assaulted. Every school you were expelled from. Every payoff your father made. Everything. Robert's eyes widened. If I do that, you'll face consequences, Claire interrupted. Real ones. Or Jin-soo can handle this his way. Your choice. It took 43 minutes. Robert confessed to 8 assaults across 4 schools. Named the lawyers who'd covered it up. Detailed the payments, the NDAs, the institutional corruption that had protected him. Claire recorded every word. When he finished, she crouched to his eye level. I'm sending this to every woman you hurt. Along with evidence your family can't suppress this time. They'll file charges. Civil suits. They'll use the system, the real system, not the corrupted version your money bought. You're letting me go? Robert's voice cracked with disbelief. Claire stood, nodding to Jin-soo, who released him. I don't need my stepfather to destroy you, Robert. Your victims will do it themselves. And unlike my family, they'll use the law to bury you where everyone can see. She opened the door. Now get out before I change my mind. As Robert stumbled out, Claire realized she'd found something more powerful than revenge. Justice delivered by the survivors themselves, amplified by the power her family provided, but executed through the very system that had failed them. She'd become something Robert could never understand. Someone who wielded both worlds. The courtroom was packed. Claire sat in the witness box, her natural hair now grown into a beautiful tapered cut that framed her face like a crown, shorter than before but deliberate, powerful hers. She'd stopped hiding it under scarves months ago. Miss Samuel, can you describe what happened on October 15th? The prosecutor asked. Claire's voice was steady as she recounted the assault, the university's betrayal, the system's failure. In the defendant's section, Robert Clarkson sat hollow-eyed in an orange jumpsuit, facing 8 counts of assault, 3 counts of witness tampering and conspiracy charges that implicated his father. 8 women had come forward using Claire's confession recording as the catalyst they needed. The university faced a federal Title IX investigation. Dean Whitmore had resigned in disgrace after emails leaked showing she'd actively conspired to protect Robert. Campus security chief Morris faced obstruction charges. In the back row, Lee and Elizabeth sat with their fingers intertwined. Lee wore an understated suit, his presence commanding despite his stillness. Elizabeth's eyes never left Claire as their daughter testified with the kind of strength that came from surviving fire and choosing not to become ash. The verdict came 3 hours later, guilty on all counts. Robert would serve 15 to 20 years. His father faced separate federal charges. The Clarkson empire had crumbled, sold off in pieces to cover legal fees and victim compensation. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Claire walked past them to where Jin-Soo waited by Lee's sedan. Her stepfather emerged, and for the first time in years, Claire embraced him without reservation. "You gave me a choice," she said quietly. "Thank you for that." Lee's hand rested gently on her head, a father's blessing. "You chose justice over revenge. You're stronger than both of us." 3 weeks later, Claire accepted a position with the Pacific Coast Civil Rights Alliance, an organization that helped assault survivors navigate institutions that failed them. She would use her experience, her education, and yes, when necessary, the quiet backing of resources her family could provide. She stood outside the correctional facility where Robert was serving his sentence, a small envelope in her hand. He gave it to the guard. "Please deliver this to inmate 847392. Inside the envelope was a single lock of her new hair and a handwritten note. "I grew back. You'll rot here. We're even." As she walked back to the car where Lee waited, Claire understood something profound. Family wasn't about blood or legitimacy. It was about people who protected you when systems failed, who gave you power and trusted you to wield it wisely, who loved you fiercely enough to let darkness touch their hands so yours could stay clean. Lee opened the car door. Elizabeth smiled from the passenger seat. Jin-Soo nodded with quiet respect. Claire slid into the back seat and went home, to a family built not on law or blood, but on loyalty and the fierce protection of those who dared to love outside the lines. Some monsters faced justice in courtrooms. Others faced it in shadows. And Claire Samuel had learned to navigate both worlds without losing herself to either. Thank you for joining me on Claire's powerful journey from victim to victor. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more compelling stories about courage, justice, and the strength it takes to reclaim your power. I want to hear from you. What did you think of Claire's choice to use the legal system instead of letting her stepfather handle Robert his way? Was it mercy or the ultimate revenge? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let me know where you're watching from. Your engagement means everything to this community.